Hi everybody and welcome to a Heel Heat review show. Last week we gave you options of what should win, but before we get into the options, I'm George Coles. This is my tag team partner, Ole Anderson.
He had about that much charisma. My name's Gary Rhodes.
And we gave you guys the options of what to pick. It was the greatest managers of all time or Ric Flair. And the survey says
Ric Flair. Now this one here is the definitive collection of Ric Flair, the Nature Boy.
Now there is a few different discs that Rick has put out over the years with WWE. There's this one, I call this the blue disc, and there's also a white disc. And pretty much a lot of similar comment on both. This one's a little bit later, so it's more updated. So let's get right into reviewing it. The first thing, we're going to review the documentary. Everybody's seen the matches, we hope. If you haven't, I don't know why you come to our show.
Stop this. Go ahead, go watch the rest of the matches, and then you come back and watch this.
Yeah, and this is something, it's a $5 or $10 DVD on Amazon. You could probably find it on eBay for $5-10 at the most.
Yeah, I got this one here when it first came out.
Yeah. Now, the first thing we want to talk about is early in Rick's life, something that's kind of made him the person he was. Rick was adopted, in case anybody doesn't know, and he never knew who his real parents were. Now, this plays into later on where he has self-esteem issues and as Triple H said, everybody knows that Ric Flair's Ric Flair except for Ric Flair. And he devalues his worth when he's probably, if not the best wrestler of all the time, he's easily in the conversation. And I would say it's hard to make an argument for anybody other than him.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a Shawn Michaels mark, and that's the only person that I would see in a rivalry against it.
Or even maybe Harley Race.
That's a guy that's just way ahead of his time right there.
I would say that's probably your three. I mean,
you got Hunter too. You can't exclude Hunter just because he's still around.
I agree. He's up there. But I'm saying as far as historically, I would agree with Hunter being up there. Harley Race, Shawn Michaels, Ric Flair, probably the three best workers. And the only reason I wouldn't add Hunter is because Hunter never had to be an hour-long guy. Where these guys, Harley Race, Ric Flair, Shawn Michaels, had to do house show main events 5 nights in a row, wrestling an hour a night.
Exactly.
And in Hunter's era, and it's not a knock, it's a different era now.
Yeah. He
didn't have to do it. A long main event was 25 minutes.
I mean, you kind of forget that Hunter's at least 10 years younger than Shawn, and Shawn's 15 years younger than Rick.
Exactly. Then after that, we got him breaking into wrestling, which he trained with Vern Gagne up in Minnesota. While he was training, he trained with the Iron Sheik, Greg Gagne, and Ken Patera. Now, how he got in is him and Greg Gagne went to high school together, and they were friends in school, and they caught up one day, and he said, "Hey, come on down." And that's what began the legendary career.
Could you picture a big 300-pound beefy Ric Flair though? Like you'll see it in there, but just seeing him in person, it would be kind of a sight to see.
They said that he came in at 300 and Patera came in at 350, and by the time that Gagne was down with him, Vern, Rick went down to 260 and Patera went down to 300. He worked them that much that he wore the weight down off him, which was good because they didn't need to be coming in that heavy. Ric Flair was trying to be a power lifter at the time, and Ken Patera was a power lifter.
There's no way he's going to compete with Ken Patera.
No. And then after that, they talk a little bit about his early career. The main thing was the plane crash. I think it was 74, with him, Mr. Wrestling, Jim Crockett, Johnny Valentine, and
the pilot
Bob Rogers. And I forget what the pilot's name was, but basically it ended Johnny Valentine's career. Tim Woods, Mr. Wrestling, his career was shortened by it.
Killed the pilot.
Well,
it didn't really kill the pilot. He died a year later from complications, but I mean, pretty much killed him. And no, Tim Woods walked away. And Crockett and Flair both had broken backs. Now, at the time, every doctor that Flair seen said, "This is it, you're done, no more wrestling, you're lucky you could walk." And if you think about that, this is 74, 38 years ago. 38 years ago.
Yeah, 38 years ago now, and he's still going now.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's not the same Ric that it was in his prime, but Ric's still able to go out there and give a good match. And then after that, it talks about his time going into the NWA and becoming the World Heavyweight Champion,
beating
Dusty Rhodes, and then the NWA didn't give him the respect he deserved during his first run. It wasn't until the second time around when he beat Harley Race at Starrcade '83.
Well, you look at it this way. I mean, back then, Dusty Rhodes is, a huge star now.
Yes.
I mean, of course, but you really weren't nothing unless you could beat the man.
Harley Race.
And Harley Race was the man. And that's a guy that Ric Flair grew up idolizing.
Yeah. And to win the championship from him was like Shawn beating Ric Flair in his retirement match. It's
exactly.
Kind of the evolution of the sport.
And not a lot of people put that evolution. Exactly. But not a lot of people really put that all together.
No, and it's something that, as you see, it's kind of, Shawn did it for Hunter when he didn't know if he could wrestle again and came back and wrestled that street fight match at SummerSlam, which we're getting a little bit off the topic, but just saying it's good to know the evolution that Harley Race went to Flair, Flair went to Michaels, Michaels went to Hunter, Hunter went to whoever he's going to give it to. I think you would say Orton or Cena, but that's another discussion for a different day.
Mm-hmm.
But then after that, it talked a little bit about that. It kind of jumped ahead to the Four Horsemen, which was the bulk of the conversation on the show, and rightfully so. The most influential group in the history of wrestling. Before that, we didn't really have stables. We had like the Heenan family, which they didn't really work together. It was just Heenan managed.
Yeah, you mostly had factions. More stables than factions. Is what I'm saying.
Yeah, they didn't work together for a common cause. Whereas the Four Horsemen was the first time that four guys got together, any number of guys, and said we're going to work for a common cause.
Ric Flair holding the belt.
Ric Flair holding the world title, holding every title at one point. They had the U.S. title, world title, tag titles, TV title, any title that the NWA had that meant something then. And truly, at the time, the NWA title was the biggest title in the world.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, WWF was a bigger company, but NWA had more history to it.
Yeah.
And then, they talked about that. Then it jumps out of the Horsemen and talks about his feud with Steamboat and Funk in '89, which I think are still some of his best matches ever. The matches he wrestled, the three match series with Steamboat, and I think he wrestled 3 with Funk too.
I think it was just that one. It was just that one, yeah.
It was at least 2, because he had one normal match that ended up in a DQ, and then it was the I Quit match.
The pay-per-view quit match, yeah.
But some of the best matches of Flair's career, I would think so. Most people put the Steamboat Flair matches right up there with the Steamboat Savage matches as some of the greatest matches of all times. I tend to agree. I think they're definitely, all 3 of them would be in my top 10.
Yeah.
So that's how good those matches were. It was almost, kind of like the Shawn Michaels Undertaker, where those last 2 matches they wrestled are in the top 10 as well. And it was a really good feud. If you don't know the history of them, definitely get this DVD. They got the matches on here. Watch these matches. Learn. This is what will teach you respect of the business.
And one thing is, Flair even said, though, that him and Steamboat had better matches in little dinky-ass places.
Yeah.
It just, they felt that they were better than these matches, but these matches were phenomenal. Could you imagine how good those matches would have been if they were caught on tape?
Exactly. Then he talked about the first Clash of Champions, where he put over Sting in the hour time limit draw. Really made Sting's career. If you think of Sting and you like Sting now, he owes everything he has to Ric Flair.
Oh, of course.
And that was the first beginning of Sting, the main eventer. Sting at the time was a TV champion, I believe.
Yeah, or United States, I thought.
Was he? But he was, not all the way up the card yet, and Flair put him over like gold, like Flair did for everybody. I mean, the guy dropped to Rico on Monday Night Raw.
Well, he dropped the world title to Ron Garvin.
Yeah, exactly. He was willing to do the job for anybody, which is why I got more respect for him than someone like Hogan, who wouldn't drop for anybody.
No.
Flair, I don't think Flair ever said no to losing to anybody.
Mm-mm.
And he got that taken advantage of him later on. Now, then they talk about the changes in WCW in the early 90s, which WCW in the early 90s was a shit pile. They were changing management basically every year. It eventually led to him leaving and going to the WWF.
Taking a real world championship.
At the time, he was still the NWA I don't know if it wasn't the WCW title yet. It was still the NWA title on WCW at that point. Because it didn't become the WCW title till Rude had it, right?
No, actually, it was still the WCW, because remember...
but it was the NWA title till Rude's when it changed and it became the WCW International title.
Exactly, yeah.
But he took the belt with him to WWE and brought it on the WWE programming, which at the time was shocking and revolutionary. Now, the one disappointment in that part was WrestleMania 8. Should have been Flair versus Hogan. It's a match that every wrestling fan of the era wanted to see, and they didn't pull the trigger.
Now, if you take the quality of the match, this match that he had with Savage would have been 10 times better.
Oh, yeah.
But the drawing power would have been Flair Hogan.
Yeah.
The biggest name up north and the biggest name down south, head to head.
Exactly. And for whatever reason, Vince didn't go ahead with it. Who knows why? Who knows why? What Vince does a lot.
I heard that what it was, they tested it out in different arenas, different venues, and stuff like that, and they said it didn't market well. They said that the whole thing was Savage and him would have marketed better. Of course, it's a better match, but you put a storyline behind something, it's going to sell.
Exactly. Then he had to run there. He won the Royal Rumble to win the world title. Then he lost it to Bret, right?
Lost it to Bret.
And then won it back from Bret.
Never went back from Bret.
No, he had it twice.
Savage. He
beat Savage.
Savage beat him at WrestleMania. He beat Savage right before Survivor Series, and
then lost it to Bret. Again, putting another younger guy over that was waiting to get into the main event.
And the thing is, Bret really never shows Flair
the proper respect.
Exactly. He acts like it's owed to him. And that's one, that's just another story altogether, but
we'll talk about Bret when we eventually do his DVD. Now, after that, he had a 2-year run in WWF. He decided he was going back to WCW. He felt more comfortable working there. Can't blame the guy.
So he lost the Loser Leave Town match to Mr. Perfect.
And as soon as he gets there, Ole Anderson, who's a friend of Ric Flair,
former Horseman,
says to him, "What am I going to do with you now? You lost to Hennig on TV." And Flair at that time became disillusioned, said, "I'm Ric Flair. You got the best thing in wrestling.
Don't screw this up."
And then Ole and Flair never got along after that. They used Flair to... Then Flair suggested Eric Bischoff being put in power when he was asked by Ted Turner and upper management who should get in power. And probably his biggest mistake he's ever made.
Then he ends up bringing Bischoff... He helps broker a deal with Bischoff to bring in Hogan and Savage.
And he says it in the DVD. Hulk Hogan and Randy Savage beat Ric Flair 4 times each in WCW before they wrestled anybody else. So he was used to put over these guys that he built WCW, and it kind of made it look like WWF was better because the WWF guys are coming in and killing Flair.
What I would have done, I would have booked it where Flair got over on Hogan's first match. Hogan really won a title and say, well, you know what, I'm going to try for it harder. And then the second time Hogan gets over. It would have been better than they would have had a rubber match.
Exactly.
But, that's just bad writing.
And they had the little problems, and then eventually it led to the issue. They don't talk about the actual issue on there, but the issue was that Ric Flair wanted to take time off to watch Reed Flair wrestle in, I think it was a high school wrestling tournament.
Mm-hmm.
And Bischoff didn't want him to do it. He just wanted him to come to the show. And I think he didn't end up going, and Bischoff basically laid him off for 6 months. There was a whole lawsuit going on. Flair comes back to WCW after they settle on the lawsuit. He has an epic promo, one of the greatest promos of all time. It starts off with Arn Anderson in the ring. Basically, they let up for a month before this that they were going to reform the Horsemen. Never said anything about Flair. Everybody knew he'd be there, though. Arn comes out. He says, well, I'm going to start the Horsemen. I'm going to be the manager. We got Chris Benoit, Dean Malenko, Mongo McMichael, and there's somebody I'm forgetting about.
He did the glasses thing like he did. Oh, what a goof! I forgot.
The Nature Boy Ric Flair. And Flair walks out to one of the hugest pops ever in WCW. And this wasn't even piped in like Goldberg. This was a huge, huge pop in what was it, South Carolina, which is Flair country. He comes out, cuts a scathing promo, rips to shreds Eric Bischoff.
Bischoff comes out, just don't even know what the hell to say, says, you're fired or some shit like that. Fire me, I'm already fired. Fire me,
Flair's so fired up that he bites his lip and is bleeding. It's epic. Watch it on YouTube. I don't know if it on. Yeah, it is on the special features. It is on the special features of this DVD. It's one of the greatest promos in the history of the sport.
Honestly, I mean, if Bischoff would have got along better with Flair, and the whole Hogan thing, everything like that would have went along better, I think they would have had a better product from the get-go.
Yeah.
Bischoff,
catered to Hogan.
He catered to Hogan, and then as soon as Hogan's there, it turned to the cartoon. Hogan went for what Vince was doing. You had your Dungeon of Doom and this, your Yeti and all these creepy, stupid characters that were, you watch on Saturday morning cartoons.
Exactly. And within 6 months of him coming back, it was right back to the way it was. 2 years later, WCW shuts down. Who would have thunk it? He says the happiest day of his life was the last Nitro, which he wrestled Sting. They're both tremendously out of shape. Both were injured at the time, but they felt that they needed to go out there for WCW's fans, which they brought to the table. Flair and Sting made WCW.
Oh, yeah.
I don't care what you want to say about the NWO. NWO brought ratings. I understand that. There is no WCW without Ric Flair and Sting.
No.
They are the backbone of WCW. Then WCW shuts down. They do the whole invasion angle in WWE. After the invasion angle, it's revealed that Ric Flair is the guy that bought...
The consortium is me!
That bought Shane and Stephanie's stocks. And he becomes the co-general manager with Vince. They can't work together, which leads to Flair eventually getting back in the ring. He wrestles a match with Vince. It's a pretty decent match. Flair didn't like it.
Flair didn't like it, but Hunter came to Flair and said that Taker wanted to work with him at WrestleMania.
And that was WrestleMania 18. It's probably, again, Undertaker at WrestleMania, there's no one better at WrestleMania.
I'm not a fan for him, but yes, there is nobody better.
And it was another classic match. It really brought Ric Flair. Ric Flair's confidence grew from that. And Ric Flair says it on the DVD even, he knew that he could be Ric Flair again. And then he ended up, him and Hunter decided they were going to start Evolution to help build up Randy Orton and Dave Bautista, which they did. I mean, everybody in Evolution won.
Yeah.
I mean, Flair got to be back on top. He got to have Intercontinental title run, Tag Team title run.
The only reason the Horseman's better in Evolution is because it was first.
Yeah.
I mean, if you really look at the number of champions at Evolution, because there was just the 4 members of Evolution. There wasn't like this guy or that guy.
Recycle it out.
Exactly. When it was done, it was done. They built 2 giant superstars out of it. They made from it what they could.
They made Batista. Orton and Batista became the next Evolution.
Exactly.
And Hunter and Flair, I mean, between the 4 guys, what do you got? 40 world championships?
More than that. You're talking about at least 60. Because you figure Flair was 16.
Flair's got 16, Hunter's got 11. 13. So that's
Orton's 12 or 11 times.
11, that's 40. And then Batista's 6, so it's 46.
I'm sorry, I thought it was 60. But it's more than, that many world title runs. Not just any other belt.
Everybody in the group eventually was either before or after a world heavyweight champion. Mm-hmm. And they really built Dave Bautista and Randy Orton's career. Whether you like these guys or not, there's a lot of negatives said about both guys. I kind of like Batista. I do. I mean, I don't think he's the most technically proficient wrestler, but he's a good big man.
He's a good big man, and he caters to the crowd. I like Orton better. And the thing is, they were building Evolution to build Orton. They were just making Batista go be like another Arn Anderson, Intercontinental U.S. champion, and they end up turning him into a superstar too. That just shows you the power that Ric Flair is a man. When you're associated with Ric Flair, and wrestling gets you.
Exactly. And then after that, it goes into his whole retirement thing, leading up to the retirement, the match with HBK at WrestleMania 24, which we should have gone to, but we didn't. I don't know why, but we really should have. It was in Orlando. It's only about an hour and a half from us.
So we go all the way down to Miami for the next time we're in Florida.
Yeah, we're never going to miss a WrestleMania that's in Florida again.
No, after Miami, we went all the way down there. We can go anywhere.
Yeah, but they talked about his retirement, which obviously it's not his retirement. He ended up going to TNA, but that's the end of the DVD. It ends on his retirement and the journey to that. It shows a little bit of his Hall of Fame speech, which I think the whole speech is on there.
Everything's on there.
The whole speech is on there. That's great. I mean, you might want to bring some Kleenex because Flair's going to cry, and if you're someone that gives a shit, you might cry as well.
To me, this DVD is the best Ric Flair DVD. I like the white one, Yeah. But this one here,
this is just an update to the white.
Exactly. And the number 2 Flair DVD, or the DVD to do it Flair, would be the Horseman DVD.
The Ric Flair and the 4 Horsemen.
Exactly.
That was good as well. Now, I would say, what would you give it out of 5 stars?
I give it all 5. I enjoyed it.
I give it a 5 out of 5. If for nothing else, the matches that you got on there, the matches itself make it a 5-star.
Well, I mean, you look at it. I mean, we usually don't do this, but you look at the matches that are on this thing. You know, you got, where's it at?
It's on.
You got him versus Jack Briscoe.
Kerry Von Erich.
Harley Race.
Him and Horseman versus Rhodes, Magnum TA, and Manny Fernandez. Sting versus Flair. Flair versus
Funk. You know, Roddy Piper. Rick Steamboat. Triple H. Shawn Michaels.
I mean, it's the who's who of the history of the last 30 years of wrestling. But basically, we both give it 5 stars. It's definitely recommended. Pick it up if you can. Get it on Amazon. Get it on eBay. Now, the next thing for our next competition, here's the idea. We're going to go with the first ECW pay-per-view, Barely Legal, versus
the last ECW pay-per-view, Guilty as Charged, 2001.
Tell us what you think you want us to review. If you want us to review the first one, put it in the comments. Hit us up on Twitter. Hit us up on Facebook. Put it down where?
Down there.
No, pick your DVD up. You got your spot.
Well, I didn't. Hold on. There. Okay. We're good.
Now you can pick the first one, Barely Legal, which started off the ECW on pay-per-view. The last one, this is 1 month before they shut down their doors, Guilty as Charged 2001. Let us know what you think. We'll review it, and that'll be the next DVD review, is one of these 2.
All right. Don't forget to catch our regular shows and our Under the Radar specials.
Exactly. And with that said, this has been a review, a Heel Heat review. My name is George Coles.
I'm Gary Rhodes.
And we'll see you on the next show.